Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 11 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is impact. Our quote of the day comes to us from Jackie Robinson. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. I'm honored to welcome today's guest to our show. Not only is she a rock star of many, many talents, but she is a business partner and one of my closest friends. I could go on and on about her, but instead I will let Kim share her own story. I'd like to introduce Kim Sutton. Kim, welcome to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I know your time is precious, so we'll jump right in. In today's day and age, with all the negativity throughout the media, the foundation of our podcast is to motivate and inspire people to never give up. I wanted to ask if you had a personal story you could share with us about perseverance, or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and never quit.
Wow, that's such a deep question. I actually went to school to be an interior architect, and I lost my job in 2008. And while a job loss could be really stressful and scary for a lot of people, it really turned out to be an opening of doors to a much better future for me. As a result of losing my job, I ended up learning about the law of attraction and realized that I just needed to stay positive through everything. And by being able to do so, even when times are tough, I have 5 kids, Chris. Even when times are tough, I keep pushing forward, and every step forward just gets me a little bit closer to those goals.
5 kids, that in itself would be one of those perseverance stories. I have 3 myself, and very, very difficult. So 5 is pretty interesting in that regard. So I commend you for that itself. If you don't mind me asking, where did you come in contact with the law of attraction? Was it a book? Was it something that you saw? How did that come about after an unfortunate time of losing your job?
So it's really crazy. After I lost my job as an interior architect, I did try to start an interior design business, but let me just say it didn't go very far because I realized it wasn't where my passion was. However, in trying to grow it, I joined a local networking group and met a chiropractor who's actually now one of my very good friends. And in the course of one of our appointments, he asked me just in small talk if I had heard of Abraham Hicks and the law of attraction. And that evening, I went home and did a lot of research and fell in love immediately. I realized that my happiness really depended on myself. And I was going through a lot right then, Chris. I had a not so good marriage, that I'll just leave it at that. And there were a lot of external factors impacting my mood every day. And I realized it did not need to be that way. So that was the end of that chapter in my life, I would have to say, and the beginning of the next one. But if you don't mind me just telling you, when I was going through those threads that day, there were people talking about winning the lottery. And I realized that I didn't need to win the lottery, but I would just like to be hired by someone who did. And within a month, I was contacted by somebody who had actually just won the Mega Millions here in Ohio. And this is back in 2008, 2009. And they hired me to do interior design in their house.
That's pretty incredible. I had no idea about that part of your story. I knew a little bit of the backstory and when we spoke offline, but I had no idea. And, I got introduced to the law of attraction by the book, The Secret, which my father recommended to me many, many years ago. We were actually on vacation in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I think I devoured the book probably in less than a couple hours, and I think it's just got a lot of great stuff in it. But one of the things people don't realize, I think, with the law of attraction is you really have to put yourself in the mindset whether it's a physical object, whether it's a job, whether it's a potential spouse or whatnot. And I think a lot of people just think and want outside as opposed to really internalizing it and putting yourself in the mindset to receive. So I think your story that you share just has a lot of overlap. And I think it's awesome that you got introduced to that by a networking group and a chiropractor. And one of the things I talk about all the time is 1 degree of separation or 1 degree to your greatness. And in this case, just a simple networking group and a chiropractor who obviously, as you mentioned, is now a good friend, makes a simple recommendation and it has a positive impact. And one of the things we talk about all the time on our podcast is you have no idea what a simple smile, a simple introduction can have on someone else's life. And maybe they're having a terrible day or going through a really tough personal time. And you never know what one little thing could have such a positive impact on somebody.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And Chris, I didn't even mention that the chiropractor, his name is Ed. He didn't even know that I had seen these forums talking about the lottery and that my response had been that I didn't need to win. I just wanted to be hired by somebody who was. He's the one who gave me the introduction to the financial advisor who was working with the lottery winner who wanted the interior design work done.
So back to my point,
Yep.
a minute or so ago of 1 degree of separation. Many of our listeners happen to be into personal development, and I was curious if you have a favorite book or if there's something that you read recently you'd like to share with our listeners.
I am still working my way through, which is sort of funny because I told you that you should read it. But The Power of I Am by Joel Osteen has completely changed my life just in the last few weeks, even though I have been very much into personal development for a couple years now. But The Power of I Am is definitely a must read for anybody, I would say.
I just actually finished that book a couple days ago, so I agree as well. In addition to that book, do you have an all-time favorite book that you'd like to recommend?
Life's Golden Ticket by Brendan Burchard.
For those of you that don't know, Brendan Burchard is a very successful author, and he's written, I believe, 3 or 4 best-selling books, but I have not actually read that one, so I will have to add that to my book list. Kim, I was curious if you have a specific morning or daily ritual that you feel has played a significant part in your success, both in your personal as well as your professional life.
This has been changing a little bit because I've gone through times when I was not sleeping enough. And listeners, if you are not sleeping enough, you have to spend more time in bed because a lack of sleep is going to put you into major stress and anxiety and depression. And Chris, I can't really say that I have a morning ritual because it really depends on how crazy any of my kids are being in the morning. I just try to get them out the door by 9 o'clock. However, every evening I do make a point of taking myself away from the computer or any screens at all, even my cell phone, at least an hour before bedtime and reading, because I've realized that I get so much better sleep if I'm not screen sucking and when I'm spending that time on personal or professional development by reading.
That's a great thing that you add, and I think, unfortunately, in today's day and age of technology and shiny object syndrome, it's really difficult to turn off a device, and it's really difficult to put a device somewhere else. And I think so many people sleep with either their phone or their iPad or a laptop right near them, and then whether it's a vibration or an actual sound, a lot of times it can keep people up. So I think that's a great recommendation, and I've been trying to do that myself. I definitely am nowhere close to perfect in doing that, but I have found personally that the days when I actually pick up an actual book and read that before I go to bed, as opposed to looking at TV or looking at my iPad or something, I find that I do get a better night's sleep. So that is a very good recommendation that you have. One of the areas we often discuss with our guests is getting out of your comfort zone. I was curious if you could attribute any of your success to something specific that you've done out of your comfort zone.
I am a digital marketing and launch strategist, and one of the biggest steps that I took was becoming an Infusionsoft certified partner. And I can get into that further, but let me tell you, Infusionsoft is often called Confusionsoft because it's a very complicated program. And I didn't know anything about it when I decided to become certified. I had 2 months to learn the program. I was pregnant with twins and I needed to fly cross country to go to my certification program. However, I put the pedal to the metal. My belly was huge. I did the work. I flew cross country and I became certified that week. And it was very surprising to me that some of the people that I went to certification with who had been working in it for 10 years didn't pass. But I guess, Chris, that I don't really think about comfort zone. I think more about what can I do to take myself to the next level.
I like that, and I think if that's how you term it and that's how you define it, I think that's important for you. But obviously, you did something that was out of your comfort zone, and there was a time crunch. And obviously, being pregnant with twins and flying across the country, that was quite an accomplishment. And as you mentioned, people that didn't pass it that have been doing it for many, many years. What motivates you to keep going each and every single day?
I'm not looking at income anymore. I mean, income is always important just because there are bills that need to be paid, but I've made a shift from income to impact. And I have goals that I know that when that income comes in that I want to produce. And for example, my husband and I want to build a rehabilitation center for displaced veterans and victims of domestic abuse. So when I'm looking at income goals, I know that there's a piece of that income that's where it's going. And I would have to say that that's where I'm going for.
That's interesting. I think that's a remarkable goal in regards to what you and your husband are looking to do. But you touch on something that's really important is income versus impact. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, chase the almighty dollar. And when you chase the almighty dollar, maybe you get there, maybe you get close to there. But I think if you chase impact, and Bob Berg, who was our episode number 1 on our podcast, he talks about going after doing it the right way and having a positive impact on somebody as opposed to going after and just chasing money. And I think you obviously touch on that. And a couple of people that have been guests really have talked about money versus having that impact or having a relationship or an experience with somebody. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people just chase that almighty dollar. And when you do that, you probably unfortunately lose out on a lot of potential opportunities and or relationships just because you're so singular focused on the almighty dollar. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's such a tricky question. You didn't tell me about this one.
I know I haven't told any guests because it would be unfair and give you an unfair advantage to think about it. So I just got to throw it out there and put you on the spot.
Okay, right now I have 2 people. And you're going to have to add this book as my number 3 book, so I apologize. But number 1 is Danielle Laporte. Desire Map is another book that I definitely recommend because her book, The Desire Map, helped me shift from income to impact. And when I did that, it was amazing. When I started following how I wanted to feel instead of the money that I wanted to make, revenue into my business actually tripled that month. And then the other one would be Ariana Huffington, just because of the sleep revolution. Because at the same time that I made that shift, I started sleeping more. And that did a tremendous lot for me physically and financially.
That'll be quite an interesting dinner. It'll be Kim Sutton, Danielle Laporte, and Ariana Huffington. I think there would be lots of powerful conversations going around there. Kim, I love your podcast, The Positive Productivity, and I would highly recommend that our listeners check it out, especially episode number 68, which personally I think happens to be your best episode yet. In addition to your incredibly successful podcast, I wanted to ask if you could share what else Kim is working on.
So besides the Positive Productivity podcast, and I love that plug for your episode, by the way, and listeners, you can find that at kimsutton.com/podcast. I am also in the process of designing the Positive Productivity Planner and app, and I hope to have those out at the end of June 2017. And I am constantly working with coaches and motivational speakers to help them share their thoughts and knowledge and products with the people who need them the most.
That's some good stuff. So your website is thekimsutton.com, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I know you have another exciting project you're working on. Would you mind sharing or touching on that a little bit with our listeners?
I certainly do not mind sharing that, and you better know it's being worked on. Listeners, Chris and I are about eyebrow deep in the launch of the I3 initiative, and I3 stands for Improvement, Impact, and Integrity. When Chris and I met, we realized that we had a lot of similarity going after impact and not so much income, and we really want to make a difference in the world. Is that fair, Chris?
That's very fair.
So the website just went live. We're launching the book club in early bird form today, well, as of the date that this podcast will go live. And we are in the midst of planning our first big live event for spring of 2018.
That's awesome. And we're also going to have a mastermind component. So if you don't mind just sharing the website with the listeners, Kim.
Sure, you can find the website at i3initiative.com, and 3 is actually the number 3. So again, that's i3initiative.com.
That's awesome. And we'll have much more information on that as we continue to build and grow that. Kim, before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any specific parting words for our listeners.
Positive productivity is not about perfection, and that's something that I've had to get over a lot. As we face struggles every day, we have to stop looking at them as struggles and look at them as learning opportunities. How can we push forth? What have we learned? And how has our life become better as a result of that struggle? So my parting word really is, don't worry about perfection. Move forth through every day with positive productivity.
That's some great stuff that you share. And I think that's an interesting perspective is positive productivity is not about perfection. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people look at the end result thinking that it needs to be perfect. But one of the things I shared during the episode number 5 with John Lee Dumas is that the most successful people in life fail more than anyone else. And that's the thing that people need to realize. And hopefully our listeners get from not only your episode, Kim, but the episodes before you and after you, is that it's not about perfection and it's not about just the end result. A lot of times it's about the ongoing quest, and whether it's monetary or a physical component takes you 6 months, a year, 2 years, it's not just the end, it's all along that has that really, really good impact. And I think, as you mentioned before, is it's not about the income, it's about the impact. And if you chase the impact and making a positive impact with people, I feel that and the karma, in the sense, is that the income and the income that you desire or need will come as a result. Lastly, Kim, what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
The best way is on my website at thekimsutton.com, or you can find me on Twitter or Instagram, also the Kim Sutton.
Well, listen, Kim, I truly appreciate your time as well as your insight, and I look forward to having you on again. And for those that have not checked out her website, I would highly recommend checking out thekimsutton.com, as well as listening to Kim's podcast, which is the Positive Productivity Podcast. Kim, thank you so much, and I definitely look forward to hopefully speaking with you very soon. To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, impact, Kim delivered some great stuff. Ironically, losing her job led Kim to finding her true passion and calling in life. The urging of a chiropractor she met at a networking group ended up having a huge impact on the rest of her life. Who are you impacting? Who is impacting you? Every single day, we all have the opportunity to make a positive impact on someone else's life. The question for you is, who can you positively impact today? I challenge our listeners to make a conscious effort to have a positive impact on at least one person's life today. It may be small and it may seem simple, but that simple act of kindness just might be that little inspirational push to motivate that person to keep going. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.